Well, thank you very much for the invitation tonight. I'm very excited to be here. I know I was planning to come here like back in February, then something happened, I couldn't make it, but I'm glad everybody made it here through the rain. Question, how many of you are business owners? Okay. I've been in practice for 18 years. I started, again, this is my second business. Started online business back in 1996 before the web actually began. Kind of in that I was actually going to hospitals and selling ads, hijacking their fax machines to do presentations. That was how back, I basically started. And so I went to Nova University in 1996. I always wanted to become an attorney. I did the evening program, graduated in 2004 when I sold my other business. And I thought it was a good idea to go on my own and start my own law practice, which it was not. I'll tell you that right now. Because the reality is when you leave law school, you really don't know what you're doing. And that's because when you're starting something new, you're not gonna do something perfect the very first time that you try it, whether it's law, business, anything else. So for the first 2 years of my practice, I was fortunate to have a mentor. And I actually paid her out of the fees that I got to teach me for the first 2 years, and even more than that. So I basically learned the craft through mentoring and through assistance. I wanted to always work with small businesses. That's my passion then, it's my passion now, because I was a business owner before, and I thought, this will be a good opportunity. That's what I relate to. So most of my clients, pretty much all my clients are people like you. They're small business owners. They're the people that you drive through the strip mall and you see your dry cleaners, your martial arts school, your pizza restaurants, your any type of restaurant you see. I pretty much have been a client of mine. Franchises, people that want to open businesses, people that want to close businesses. Those are my clients. Basically, small business owners. So I relate to them, and I realized as I was doing these consultations that the mistakes were repeating itself. The mistakes in the consultation that were coming to me were pretty much the same. They were very similar themes. 10 years ago, I said, you know what, I need to write about this. I need to write about, back then it was the 7 common legal mistakes. So I added one more. I don't know which one I added, but I added one more because I think we did it to 10, then with the publisher, we brought it on to 8. But they're basically mistakes that happen all the time. And the reason for the mistakes is one of the things that we as business owners, we're problem solvers. And we like to do things ourselves. And that's the reason that we went into business, because we believe that we can do it better than somebody else. Otherwise, we're not going to business. We would like to have independence. We like to have that ability to craft our own destiny. So, but one of the things that I found out is that as people came to my office, they were doing the legal work themselves. And I'll give you an example. One of the times that people, and I have in the book, I'm happy to give you a copy, and if you want, I can sign it for you as well. It's because I want to share this information with you. The book is basically conversation. It is not necessarily a book about legal cases or case law. It's really, as you're coming to my office and asking me a question, I'm talking to you. A common mistake that I see is people lease agreements. How many of you have a lease? Okay, so a lot of times people do not read their leases. They, once you go into a landlord, unless you're an attorney yourself, you're at a disadvantage. Your lease agreements are pretty much written by attorneys, and they're very skilled property managers. And when you get that lease agreement, it could be 10, 30 pages long. They say, go ahead and take a look at it. People sign it, and then they don't realize that they're responsible for additional charges. There are CAM charges, real estate charges, insurance. The landlord is there to make money from the tenants, and that is fine. That's what the reason they're landlords. They bought the property for a reason. But the tenants do not realize that they're responsible for the AC, the plumbing, anything that goes wrong in that unit, they're responsible for it. So they come to my office and listen, you know what, I've been there for 3 years. The AC broke down. The landlord wants me to replace it. And I'm like, okay, let me take a look at the lease. And I'm like, did you inspect this before you signed that lease? Do you have somebody go in there into that property and, just pay $200 for an AC company to inspect the AC and find out whether it was working or not? No, we didn't do that. He told me it was working. He told me that it will be working when I go in. Okay, was it working? Yes. Okay. Guess what? You'll have to replace the AC. It's bad news, but you can negotiate that. You can work with the landlord. You can basically, in that case, your lease is up in 2 years. It's not fair for you to spend $5,000, $10,000 for a lease for a new AC when you're not going to stay there. You may not stay there, but you can work with the landlord and see. You got to be very nice about it because you don't have any leverage here. You can be very nice about it and say, okay, listen, I'm willing to renew this lease for another 5 years. I'm willing to contribute towards a new AC, but you got to help me with that. Can you do half? And you can work with the landlord that way. But a lot of times, a common mistake that I see from business owners, they sign leases without reading them, or they just basically do a cursory review, or they're reading them and do not understand them. So an advice that I give is like, before you sign a lease, just consult with an attorney. Just have an attorney review it beforehand, and not just review it to see if it's legal, which really drives me nuts when people ask me, is this a legal document? Of course it is. It is well written, has all the provisions, nothing wrong about it. The question is this deal good for you? Can you afford this lease? So I don't know. So only the rent is $1,200, and I'm like, have you heard it? You gotta pay insurance, taxes. Do you know about that? No. I'm like, well, you gotta do the math before you sign this lease. And I said, do you know how you're gonna make money in this business? Which is the second mistake. Business owners sometimes go with the greatest intention, the greatest passion to start a business. And I've seen disaster stories that I can be here all night about it. And the failure to do a business plan, the failure to plan and basically look from a business from the big picture and see how you're really gonna make it happen, it's a failure. And I get people coming to my office and say, I wanna start this startup. In a podcast that I have, I do the example of an ice cream shop because it's easier to explain. But it actually happened where somebody wants to do an ice cream shop. And just remember that. It's because they do not understand how many sales will it take for them to be able to meet their expenses. And that's very important. When you're talking about the lease agreement, which is one of the major expenses you have, then you have payroll, you have employees, and hopefully you'll be able to pay yourself as well. And if you do not know how many sales, what is the average ticket item, how many sales you gotta make in order to meet your overhead, you should not even sign any documents in the first place before doing simulation on paper. So a lot of times when I talk to clients, I tell them, you're not ready to move forward. Don't ask me to write an operating agreement. Don't ask me to start a corporation. For you, anybody can do that. You can go to some business and do it yourself for $75. It's not brain surgery. But you can actually get yourself in trouble by going through the steps without really giving it some thought and doing some simulations in a spreadsheet how this business is going to work. So a lot of times I said, go back, download a business plan template from the web, or hire a consultant, do a couple of spreadsheets, do some math. The worst that can happen to you is that it does not work on paper. That's the worst that can happen, that you basically spent an hour or two looking at it and finding out, maybe this is a little bit too much of a risk. And every business takes risks, but at the very least you got to know what risk you're taking. And what is disheartening to me sometimes, business owners do not understand the level of risk they're taking, and they're doing it out of passion, they're doing it out of hope, they're doing it out of enthusiasm, optimism, and they come to my office about this business, which is the third story I'll tell you, and things didn't work out. They didn't tell, the sales that they told me that I was gonna make, I'm not making that type of money. You never will. That's the reality. So what I try to bring with my book and in my practice is a reality check. And not many attorneys take that approach, but I take it, and that's the reason I've been doing this for 18 years, and that's the reason I have clients that follow me, continue my path since I started the practice. Because sometimes you gotta basically give them the bad news and tell them, listen, you gotta give this some thought. We need to be your brakes, you need to be your conscience before you actually go forward. In buying, selling businesses, when people buy businesses that we're not supposed to, that's even the worst part. I mean, I have stories of clients that basically buy businesses, not for $50,000, you're talking $600,000. They borrow money from their houses, and they invest in this business. They go online, they meet with business brokers. I like business brokers, but they have a job to do. They're not there to protect you as the buyer, they're there to close the deal. And it's in their contract. It is your responsibility. I'll get you this company. The seller is there to sell the business. That's his job, or her job. The broker is there to make the deal happen for you, for him, or her, to get the commission. But if you have the money, they're gonna make that deal happen, for the most part. But if you don't do the due diligence to hire an attorney to help you with the due diligence, that's one of the fatal mistakes that a business owner can make. And I've had examples. Just a few years ago, a client of mine bought an online business, spent close to $500,000 in the online business. He did everything himself. And he did what he considered proper due diligence, which I don't believe it was. And a few months later, after he bought the business, he came to me and said, I'm not making the money that they said they were gonna make me, that I was gonna make. The inventory that they said they were gonna give to me was not the right inventory, and there was some misrepresentation on some of the financials. And I'm like, there's a lot to unpack here. The thing with due diligence, and just what due diligence means, investigating the company. Is basically going through the books and records. And I use a list of like 4 pages long, and ask like 50 different items. And I do it on purpose. I tell them, if it's not applicable, you say not applicable. You say you don't have it, you don't have it. But I'm gonna ask for it. Because if they say something comes up later, I wanna make sure that I ask for it. You say you don't have it, well, we did ask for it, and this came up. Like not paying your payroll taxes, not paying your sales taxes. I wanna make sure that I ask that question, we get the proper proof. But in this particular case, the problem is that not only he signed all the closing documents, but he also negotiated the price in the middle of the sale, which made it very difficult to do an argument on misrepresentation, because once you begin to negotiate the terms of the contract, and then you negotiate it down, it's just really, really difficult. And in contract law, something called the merger clause. What that means is that if you sign a document that said everything that we said in the past, everything that we talked about beforehand, is merged into this document, and it doesn't matter anymore. So it tells you do not rely on anything that was said in the past. They're telling you we're making, $10,000 a month in sales. They're just basically, we have a $4,000 a month profit. You can be making this amount of money. You can believe all that, but in the written document, it's really what governs. Not what they tell you beforehand, unless it's something very, very extreme, like fraud, but that's a different topic altogether. Even that sometimes is covered in the merger clause. So that's extremely important to know, that once you sign a document, especially that says, whatever you talked in the past doesn't matter, this is what matters. And also tells you in the document, for the most part, when you use a business broker or an attorney that prepares the closing documents, that you have the opportunity to seek legal counsel, and you also had the opportunity to seek financial counsel, financial advice. That you should not rely on anything that anybody told you. And you sign that document, then it becomes really an uphill battle for us, litigation attorneys, to find out anywhere to get around that particular clause. We can, but there are very, very few exceptions. And I'd rather not deal with that exception. I'd rather just have somebody use the preventive measure of, hey, before I sign this deal, let me just go ahead and have somebody help me. But somebody can help me that understands not just the terms of the contract, but the reasons you're going in the contract in the first place. Because anybody can read a contract and tell you, yeah, this looks good, go for it. Okay, but you gotta put a break and say, why are you doing this? I mean, my job is not to talk you out of anything, but my job is to tell you this is what can happen, this is what you're getting into. If you wanna do it, listen, go ahead, it's your money, but your advice, and I'll send an email on that as well to make sure that he knows that I'm covered, that this is what you're doing. If you wanna do it, go for it, but I'm advising you, you might wanna give it some thought before you go forward. But not every case like that. Sometimes there are deals that look good, and the parties, they go through a CPA, reviewed by attorneys. A lot of deals, for the most part, they go, you gotta take a risk anywhere. One thing I want to talk to you about as well is I talked in my podcast. My podcast is Business SOS. It's in Apple and Spotify and all the podcast channels. There recently, I don't know if it's in Florida, for whatever reason, there are a lot of scams. And there are two particular scams that have come up, I mean, very frequently. We're talking about 6, 7 cases in the last 2 months. So one of them is Amazon automation. And the other one is trucking automation. I don't know anybody who's actually making money on these. Obviously, if they're making money, then I'm gonna go to an attorney. But what basically the premise is this. There are different companies doing this. I'm not gonna mention any companies, I don't wanna get sued here. If they're suing me, they're welcome to, I'll deal with it. I do this every day. But the premise is this. Pay me like $40,000, $50,000, okay? You're also gonna open some credit cards, $10,000, $20,000 for credit lines. I have a management team, you never meet them, they just all work online. And then we're going to create an Amazon store for you, Walmart store for you. We're gonna buy some products that we believe that you're gonna be selling. With your credit cards you're gonna give to me. The $40,000 is non-refundable because you're gonna basically do it for my expertise. And then I'll guarantee you that in 2 years you'll get your money back. And if in 2 years you're not making $100,000, in 2 years you let me know and I'll give you your money back. Okay, you're doing like this, trust me, it's happening. A lot of very, very good, well-meaning business owners have gotten into these type of transactions. The people who are selling them are very skilled at what they do, at selling these programs. And the thing about it is that contracts, they're not necessarily illegal. They're not necessarily nothing wrong with the contracts. In fact, they're very well-written contracts to the extent that by the time that I see them, I have to basically figure out a way to get around them because all of them have, okay, you gotta wait 2 years before you can actually file a type of claim because how are you gonna exercise the guarantee because you gotta wait 2 years. So if you don't get any money for the next 2 years, you technically can't do anything. Number 2, then you have an arbitration clause. And the arbitration is usually in a different state. And to the American Arbitration Association. And when I ask my clients, do you know what the American Arbitration Association is? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, let's talk about that. So I put up the website and I'm like, okay, so you're suing for $100,000, you gotta put like a $10,000 fee. Oh, I didn't know that. So yeah, so it's gonna cost you a lot of money to go through a AAA, plus you gotta pay the arbitrator $600 an hour. So the cost of the litigation becomes prohibitive, and in many cases, these people don't have anything. And this is the saddest part. or they have enough to try to get something going, but the cost of litigation sometimes exceed their ability to pursue it, and they'll end up losing the money. Another point that I make in the book is like, in business litigation, it's a battle of resources. It's not about who's right or wrong. I get people come to my office, do I have a great case? I'm like, yeah, you might have a good breach of contract case, somebody didn't pay you. And a lot of time it happens with buy-sell agreements, happens with promissory notes, people lending money. And I said, but do you have the ability to pursue litigation? So what do you mean? Litigation is gonna cost you, a good case, $25,000, $30,000. That's before you went to trial. Because 80% of litigation in business is procedure. It's not by like when you go on TV and you have a case, you go to trial. It doesn't work that way. 80% of our time in a litigation process that takes about 18 months to 24 months, we're only focusing on procedure. We're fighting with our opposing counsel, we're filing motions back and forth, we're getting in front of the judge for motions because nobody gives us documents. The client has no control. Only the lawyers have control, and it's like a toll road that you go through. Every time you go through a turnpike, it's $1,000. Every single time. And in fact, the other side creates work for you because you gotta respond. So when I tell my clients, like, you want to avoid litigation as much as you can, sometimes you have to, but to the extent that you can avoid it, avoid it. And I'm a very big proponent of mediation and alternative dispute resolution because it gives you control as the client in trying to resolve the matter, as opposed to giving the judge and attorneys control. For small business owners are really in a tough spot because if you got to pursue someone, it comes out of your pocket. If somebody sues you, that you have to defend it, it comes out of your pocket if it's not covered by insurance. So as most owners, you guys are in a tough spot. So the idea is to triage, get it resolved, and get it out of the way. That's basically my approach when I approach litigation, is basically look at it, how we're gonna resolve, just get it out of the way, simply because the longer it passes, it escalates. So those are the 3 points I wanted to make. Don't do legal work by yourself. Read your lease agreements, read all the contracts. Another rule that I have, if you do not understand the contract, do not sign it. Very simple, but don't sign it. Don't be rushed. Any deals that are fast deals, they're red flags. And he said, you gotta do it by tomorrow, I need this money. No, just don't do it. Just, doing due diligence is very important. And more importantly, stay out of lawsuits. As much as you can. And if you have, when in doubt, if somebody keeps you up at night, something keeps you up at night that regarding your business, legal question, call an attorney. It's just simple as that. Sometimes the phone, sometimes a personal consultation, now via Zoom, we can do those. It's just getting that answer really will give you peace of mind. Do you have time for questions and answers?
Go ahead. Q&As. Come on. It doesn't cost you anything. Take advantage.
Yeah, thank you. Can we retain you tonight?
Absolutely. She's going to be passing
No, I'm just joking. But we get a lot of calls and scam calls, even from other states. Timeshare cancellation companies. Are those scams?
It depends.
Yeah.
Depends. There's some. I had a client that dealt with timeshare cancellations, and they were legit. So that was like 8 or 9 years ago. But there's some of them are legit, some of them that could be scams. That I cannot tell you about any of them.
How do
But
we?
Just gotta do your due diligence. You gotta, testimonials, get their business records. But I know those companies exist, and that's a unique area. Not necessarily a law, but they're kind of experts at that. But some companies are legit. So. Yeah.
Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Come on.
Don't be shy.
I'll ask a second one.
All right, go ahead.
Mainly because I feel at home. I used to coordinate financial aid here at this college for 8 years. But my question is, I own a golf cart company, Reliable Golf Carts. I'm the 100% owner. It's a C corporation. What happens to that company if I die? And along with that, can I will that company, a corporation, to my children, let's say?
Yeah, the stock, yeah, absolutely. There are two questions here.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the estate becomes the owner of that company, of that stock. But also you can actually, that's part of your estate planning, which is it's outside of my practice area. But from what I understand from my colleagues, you can actually, that particular stock is property. You can put that in your will or in a trust. There are a number of areas. And if you need a referral to somebody, let me know, I can give you a referral.
Okay.
But the answer is yes, yeah.
Okay.
Another question, how much can you charge for reading an agreement?
Depends on the agreement.
I own a business, but I never read my agreement. I own a little bit. I own insurance agency. You know?
I'm sorry, you own which-
Insurance.
Insurance, okay,
Yes, we have franchise.
okay.
Oh, I never read the agreement because I started with you or it was too long, 300 pages. Not take to talk. I will tell you it was a book.
Okay, that's the FTV probably.
Yeah. And I said, no, I don't do that, but I research. Before I say, I have a family who is a lawyer too, only for you know, commercial part in Boca Raton. She's a lawyer too, and she reading a little bit. You know, sometimes what you say is true, but sometimes when you want to have a business and make your own money and don't work for nobody, you will not read the 30 page or 40 page of the agreement. The most important for me what he say, if I die, my business transfer to my children is the most important. They need to have a license like me. Second, if I want to sell the business, I say to them first, oh, I find a person outside. Third, I need my money every month in my account. This is what I need my commission payout.
Yeah.
But you know, I want to really, how much they charge? It's a small agreement, it's not, believe me, mine is, with the company I have now, is very small. How much do you charge?
I give you my information, you
Okay.
email it to me and then I'll send you an email back, okay?
But I do a good deal.
Okay.
You know, I didn't really do, my family didn't really do.
I'll take care of it, no
But I
worries.
want to know if there's something there, because I did many with commercial owners, like you said before, who are tenant occupied. You know, the landlord, they don't know when they call you need only liability, no, you need to have a policy where you are covered for the sign, for the glass, for the bathroom, for the roof, for the fish, and many, you know, many business owners don't know about that.
Yeah, I mean, the way our practice works, we do a 30-minute free Zoom telephone consultation. So we can do that, and then based on the agreement, tell you this is what I will try to review it and give you my comments. So, but anybody wants to talk to me, it's 30 minutes free consultation anyway.
I can't refer my client to you because I have a many commercial business owner. When I say, what is under leasing agreement? You know, do you need to have only liability, or it is, you know, you need to have it to a business owner policy? Oh, I don't know, only liability, and they are wrong.
They're wrong, yeah.
You know, good, I rent a location where I don't need to pay for the toilet, for the electric, nothing that. I rent a location where I don't need to pay for that. So
Yeah.
say, yeah.
It's funny, what's your name?
And Madai,
Madali?
Madai,
Madai?
Mayday.
Mayday? Mayday. It's interesting you mentioned at least the insurance portion of it. What I usually do is, now that I know you refer to an insurance broker, said you gotta talk to Madai and then she'll give you a quote. Because I don't sell insurance, but I said, this is what you need to basically understand the cost of what insurances you're required to, just for the landlord's benefit, but you also get insurance for yourself as well.
I always do, I also always, the landlord most of the time want to be additional insurance or waiver subrogation, and people don't know, sometimes you say, can you